Welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming and our Jinx guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Let's start with our pro, con, and mixed. Like always, the mixed category is some aspects of the champion are positive or negative based on your own personal perspective. And this will just give you kind of a brief rundown of how the champion plays and what the positive and negatives are to know if you want to play this champion. So let's start with the pros. Constant damage. Jinx is able to output damage whenever she plays a card, dealing damage to both the enemy nexus and a random enemy unit. And so that makes it that she's able to constantly clear the board just by playing her cards every single time. Next, she is consistent. It's very easy to win every single match with Jinx, especially if you build her out correctly and have the right levels on her. Even the hardest matches in the game, you can go in confident that you will come out successful with Jinx. Unique, she is the only champion that really works around this discard style, as well as with this high aggro playstyle. So she really has a unique playstyle that no one else can really touch, really match. And next, she is essentially overpowered. Now, she's the first champion you get in Path of Champions. They wanted a easy champion that people could win games with, and she definitely fits that. Say almost everyone agrees that she's hands down the most powerful champion in Path of Champions. Alright, let's go on to the mixed category. Simple. So, unlike Annie that we were talked about last time, Jinx is a very simple champion. Now that can be great if you don't want to overly think, you just want to get your 5 wins of the day and you just want the easiest champion possible. You can get on Jinx and not really have to think about it, just play your cards, play Jinx, and you'll probably win the game. And so that can be very good, but if you're wanting something that you wanted to put a bit more brain power into, you probably want to play a different champion. Alright, next, she is discard focused. Now, that gives her that fun, unique playstyle, but if you don't really like playing with discards, then maybe he's not the right champion for you. Next, for the cons, champ reliant. Jinx is very powerful, and when you build her, essentially when you play Jinx, you win the game. But if you are having very bad luck and you just never draw Jinx, that can be the one thing that costs you the game. Now, normally you'll be cutting cards and trying to get as many copies as Jinx as you can so that doesn't happen. But if you just have terrible luck, that will lose you the game just not drawing Jinx. Next, relic reliant. Now, while Jinx can do fine with a wide variety of relics, she definitely has one that just stands above all the other ones, and that essentially turns Jinx into an I win button. You just play her with that relic and you win the game, but if you don't have that relic, you will probably have a bit harder of a time. Lastly, repetitive. Jinx, while being very, very strong, definitely can be a bit repetitive. Normally what happens is you just get to the 4 mana, you play Jinx, you win. Doesn't matter what you're going against, what special encounters you might be playing. You essentially play Jinx, you win, and that's it almost every game. So it can be very repetitive to do that over and over again. Alright, that's it for the overview. Let's jump into game and take a look at Jinx and her star powers. Alright, Jinx star powers. So the rank 1 star power is what's the worst that could happen, and it is deal 1 to the enemy nexus when you play or discard a card. The rank 2 star power is Wreak Havoc. You get that +1 starting mana, and then whenever a champion levels up, so whether that's Jinx or the support champion that you have, you create a super mega death rocket in hand. And that is 1 cost. We will work on getting that reduced, but that is 1 cost by default. And then the rank 3 is the what's the worst that could happen, rank 2. And it is when you play or discard a card, deal 1 to the enemy nexus and to 1 random enemy. So this gives Jinx a very strong playstyle of every time you discard a card, you're damaging the nexus and then a random target. And then if you play a card that discards another card, then you're doing 2 damage essentially. So this gives her that discard focus of doing more damage. And then it just gives you that constant, consistent damage of every single time you're playing a card, you're doing damage to the enemy nexus and their cards. This is what makes Jinx so incredibly powerful. And then this super mega death rocket, the fact that it's with any champion can be very strong. Now by default, like I said, it is 1 cost, so you normally need to bank a little bit of mana if you don't have certain star powers, so that when you level up Jinx, you will be able to use that immediately. Alright, let's go over to relics. So for Jinx, there's a lot you can do with her, but there's certain ones that are just essentially the best. Now the one relic that essentially makes Jinx a I win button is this right here, the Loose Cannon's Payload. So when I'm summoned, discard your hand and then create that many Pow Pows in hand. Now what the Pow Pow is the 2 mana, deal 3 to a unit. This immediately levels up Jinx, so then it also gives you that 1 cost death rocket. And then also, since you're discarding your hand, it plays into the other part of her star powers where she's dealing damage to the enemy nexus as well as the enemy units. So normally what you want to do is you want to have a full hand, play Jinx on 4, that will deal a ton of damage to the enemy nexus and normally just clear the enemy board because of the star power dealing damage to everything since you're discarding it. You will then have a death rocket that you can play, which will then also just further help clearing the board and dealing damage to the enemy nexus. These other relics just help further make it so that Jinx just wins you the game. So the Dreadway Chase Gun gives you 2 warning shots in hand. The warning shot is a deal 1 to the enemy nexus, but this doesn't really matter. We're placing it first, so that when you play Jinx, it will make these 2 warning shots, but then they will immediately get discarded by the Loose Cannon Payload. And so that's just giving you 2 more things that get discarded to do more damage to the enemy nexus, and then give you just more Pow Pows. So if the board for some reason isn't cleared, your hand full of these Pow Pows will just be able to destroy anything. Then we have the Curator's Gatebreaker. This is just further gonna make Jinx destroy the enemy nexus. The reason we're putting this last is so that she will level up from the Loose Cannon's Payload before striking. That's just giving you further damage on the enemy nexus. Now, definitely go and experiment with other relics. This is just if you want to win, and you want to win as soon as possible, this will probably be the best setup for you just to play and win the game as soon as you hit level 4. Alright, let's talk about which cards to cut. Now, normally you want to cut any bad cards that you just pick up along the way when you just win an adventure. They give you an option of cards, and you just have to choose something, or with your support champion. So generally you want to cut those first, but in her starting deck, Normally the ones I always try to cut is the Amateur Aeronaut and the Sump Dredger. Now these two, in my opinion, are just a lot weaker than mostly the options. Like right here we have the Rocket Boarder, which is 4/4 Quick Attack Fury, and it just costs 2 mana, and I find I'd rather play that than either one of these 3 drops. And then also normally with Jinx, you want to bank a little bit of mana before you play her, so you can play that Death Rocket or any of those Pow Pows, just so you can further clear the board. So normally, if you're going to be cutting something from her starter deck, I would recommend cutting one of these 2 3 drops. Alright, let's go into some of the powers you want to pick up with Jinx. Alright, like Annie, which was our last video, one of the powers you want to get first is either Wild Inspiration or Spell Slinger. Now, like we were just talking about, Jinx is going to create that Super Mega Death Rocket and then all of those Pow Pows in hand when you play her. And so you want to get one of these just to reduce that cost, so that when you play Jinx, you're able to freely play all of those spells without being limited, especially the Death Rocket, because it is fleeting, so you have to play it that round, otherwise it goes away. So that's definitely one of these powers, is one that you want to get as early as possible. Alright, next, these are all ones that just help Jinx's game plan in one way or the other. So, Slow But Steady, this will double up your Death Rockets, so when you play one, it'll play 2 instead, which just gives you massive damage to further clear the enemy board and destroy the Nexus. Raiding Party, when you damage the enemy Nexus, grant the top ally in your deck 1/1. Now, because of Jinx's star powers, every time she plays a card, she's damaging the enemy Nexus. So this is just going to passively buff up all the cards in your deck, so you're going to get some huge cards that you can play, just because every time you play a card, you're damaging the Nexus. So this is just a common power, but it's very strong on Jinx. Next is Flexible Game Plan, another easy, common one to get. Game Start, Draw 2. Now, why this is so good, it's further giving you more chances to draw Jinx at the start, but the big reason is that when you play Jinx, you want to have that full deck of cards, or full hand of cards, so that you're going to be discarding more, making more Pow Pows, and then also just dealing more damage to the enemy Nexus and their units when you discard them all with the Loose Cannon's payload, that relic I was talking about. So this just further reinforces that game plan. So these are just some relics that are normally pretty easy to get, so if you see them in game, even if they're these ones that are common, they work very well for your game plan for Jinx. Normally ones you want to pick up. Now, there's plenty of other powers that are great on Jinx, so definitely experiment. These are just some that I wanted to highlight. Alright, thanks for watching our Jinx guide. We're trying to grow this channel, just starting out here on YouTube, so liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, commenting down below, that'll all be super helpful to grow the channel. So if you can, please do that. It will mean a lot to me. I will be posting a Jinx walkthrough for Jinx versus Galio tomorrow, so definitely stay tuned to that. I will be adding a link to that in the description once it gets posted, so you can look down below for that. But thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.